the NFL has its fair share of stars, guys like Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Donald, who coming into every season, you expect great things from them. You expect them to put their team in the best position possible to contend for a championship. But there's also a lot of guys who coming into every season, you might not have the highest expectations for them. You might not know what you're getting from them, but there's always guys who exceed expectations and help their team reach a higher level than maybe we thought that team originally could. And every season there's guys for really every team who fit this mold. So I'm going to try to identify what I think is the biggest X factor guy, the biggest possible potential shifter for all of these teams coming into the 2021 NFL season. I'm going to do the AFC in this video, and I'm also going to have an NFC video as well. And starting off with the Buffalo Bills, I think Zach Moss, the running back, has the biggest chance of shifting their potential. When you look at the Bills, you know what you're getting for the most part. You know Josh Allen and the rest of the offense is going to be very pass heavy and very effective. You know the defense, while not going to be an elite defense, is definitely going to be solid enough to allow the Bills to potentially compete for the AFC title. But the one glaring issue they have is the run game. It's been very inconsistent and not very dependable over the past few seasons. But I think Zach Moss could potentially change that this year if he is able to fulfill the role of a full-time number one back after a rookie season where he dealt with injuries and COVID issues. He didn't really get the chance to prove himself. But this season, if he's able to land the number one job over Devin Singletary, I think if he is able to break out, it's going to mean big things for Buffalo and their chances of reaching the Super Bowl for the first time in probably over 30 years, actually. Nearly 30 years, I should say. Next, I have for the Miami Dolphins, I have rookie pass rusher Jalen Phillips, the number 18 overall pick out of Miami. So he's staying where he went to college. The Dolphins' defense was the heart of the team last year. It allowed them to go 10-6, and while they didn't make the playoffs, it was certainly their strength was the defense. However, they've lost a few key parts in the offseason, and even going back to last year, the pass rush wasn't necessarily the most effective part of the team. Sure, a guy like Emmanuel Ogbah did have, I believe 9 sacks on the season, but few would regard him as an elite pass rusher. Now, if Phillips is able to come in right away and be an impact first-round pick, get maybe double-digit sacks for this team, it could change their fortunes for the better. They're going to be on the fringe of that playoff race, and if they can develop an elite pass rush or just improve that pass rush at the outside linebacker position, I think they'll definitely be in position to make the playoffs, and Phillips could definitely alter their prospects for this season. For the New England Patriots, I look at running back Damien Harris, who, by all accounts, when you look at the stats, was one of the most efficient backs in the NFL last year. He's got a rock-solid offensive line to block for him. Mac Jones has been installed as the quarterback, which, in my opinion, is a big add for this Patriots offense. And really, all that needs to happen for Harris is for Bill Belichick to just trust him to be the full-time guy. Bill Belichick is going to need to resist the urge to use James White as much as he used to. He's going to need to resist the urge to put Ramondre Stevenson in on the goal line. If he just lets Damien Harris be a full-time running back, I really think Harris could do big things for this Patriots offense and could put them in position to make the playoffs. After missing the playoffs last season, Harris certainly has the talent as he showed at Alabama. So I guess in a way it's both Bill Belichick and Damien Harris as the X factor for the New England Patriots. For the New York Jets, I have rookie quarterback number 2 overall pick Zach Wilson. I say that Wilson is the X factor for the Jets because when you look at the team, there's very, very, very limited chance that they're going to be even close to a 500 team this year. And the only thing that can really change that is if Wilson immediately shows that he was worth that number 2 overall pick. Quarterbacks can do big things for an offense. You look at the receivers on this team, they're solid, but they're not stars. But if Zach Wilson is able to immediately prove that he is worthy of that number 2 pick, it could help the Jets offense immensely. New head coach Robert Saleh is more defensive coach anyway, but if he can get Wilson, if Wilson can indeed fulfill his potential very quickly, I think the Jets could be a little bit better than we anticipated, although I don't see them being a playoff team. Moving on to the Cleveland Browns, I've got Odell Beckham coming off an ACL tear. He's so far in his first 2 seasons with the Browns, he's kind of struggled to gel with Baker Mayfield, but coming off the injury, now that the Browns have established a winning culture, they've established a great run game with Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, and their, in my opinion, possibly the best offensive line in the NFL. I think the pressure will be off Odell coming back and allow him maybe to find his role in this team a lot more and potentially even get back to being a number 1 receiver. I'm not expecting him to necessarily be an all-pro kind of guy again, but just to emerge once again as a number 1 target on a team would be huge for the Browns and possibly even set them apart from teams like the Chiefs and the Bills in the AFC championship hunt. So I think Odell could be the big shift guy for the Browns this year. Moving on to another receiver for the Ravens, rookie Rashad Bateman. Now, he did just get injured, and I think he's expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks to start the season, which isn't a great sign. But it's not like that number 1 receiver role for the Ravens will be filled in the meantime. Marquise Brown so far has only been a deep threat at best, and Sammy Watkins, while solid, is not the answer either. So I think if Bateman comes back off his injury and proves that he was the right selection for the Ravens in the second round right away and emerges as their number 1 receiver, it could be huge for the Ravens passing game and huge for Lamar Jackson, who hasn't had a lot of super reliable guys to throw to outside of Mark Andrews the past 2 seasons. So I think Bateman, if he has a solid rookie season, could really help the Ravens remain in the division hunt with the Browns. As for the other playoff team last year in that division, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they started really hot last year, fizzled out, partially due to their very poor run game, which is why I think Najee Harris, the rookie running back out of Alabama, could really be a huge factor for them this year. Although the offensive line has looked absolutely terrible, and every running back, including Harris, struggled in the preseason when it comes to efficiency, yards per carry, stuff like that, I think there's still a chance that Harris is just so good that he shrugs that off and really helps revive this Steelers run game that's been pretty dormant the last 2 seasons. And if Harris can prove to be an elite back right away, that could help the Steelers remain in the playoff hunt after a lot of people are already writing them off this season. So if Harris can fulfill his potential, I think he could be a Rookie of the Year front runner and really help the Steelers. As for the Bengals, who are probably the clear last place team in that division, I think Joe Burrow is the X factor here, right? He's the number 1 overall pick last year, coming off a record-setting career at LSU. Tears the ACL, large part thanks to the Bengals' lack of protection for him. He was getting sacked a lot before then. And while the Bengals didn't address the offensive line as highly as some would have liked, maybe taking Penei Sewell instead of Jamar Chase, I still think Burrow is the X factor for this team, because maybe if he comes out off the surgery looking healthy and starts to, in year 2, really gel with Zach Taylor as his head coach, he's got his college receiver in Jamar Chase now with him. And Joe Mixon can stay healthy and not be Joe Mixon. Burrow could have the weapons needed to already prove that he's a franchise quarterback, and that could really help the Bengals exceed their expectations, because the expectations right now for them are not very high. Next for the Tennessee Titans, moving over to the next division, the AFC South. I have Bud Dupree as the X-Factor guy for them. Coming off probably his best season of his career as a pass rusher for the Steelers last year. It was cut short to, I believe, an Achilles tear, maybe an ACL tear. I think it was Achilles. And that led the Steelers not re-signing him. The Titans instead gave him a big contract, and their pass rush and defense overall last year was very lackluster. It contributed to them not going as far in the playoffs as they would have wanted. But with Dupree in town, and he's going to be healthy, he's going to be ready to start the season. If he can prove that he's healthy and still a great pass rusher, that could help the Titans defense quite a bit, and help them remain the front runners for the AFC South title. The other team that admittedly probably won't be competing with all the injuries they've had, but the Colts, who competed closely with the Titans last season for that division, I got Carson Wentz as the X factor here. Although he did have the foot injury, and over the summer, it looks like he might be ready for week 1. And compared to the rest of his team, he might be the healthiest guy on the offense, as all of a sudden guys like T.Y. Hilton are starting to get banged up. Marlon Mack coming off the injury. Of course, Jonathan Taylor's there. But I mean, with Wentz, he's got a great offensive line in front of him, reuniting with Frank Reich. I do think last season, although it was very ugly, I think it was an outlier for Wentz. I don't think he's going to necessarily be 2017 Wentz again, but there's a chance that he proves he can be a franchise quarterback for the Colts, especially with a great offensive line to protect him. And maybe getting back with someone he was comfortable with in 2017 will allow him to succeed and help the Colts stay in that playoff hunt despite the injuries that are already seeming to set them back this year. For the Jacksonville Jaguars, I have their young secondary as a whole. They have C.J. Henderson, the number 9 pick in the 2020 NFL Draft. They have Tyson Campbell, the first pick of the second round in this year's draft. Safety Andre Sisco, and I'm forgetting one more person. And Shaquille Griffin, the corner from the Seattle Seahawks, coming over from free agency. I think this secondary has all the potential in the world to emerge as a real important piece of this Jacksonville team. Their defense as a whole, not great right now, but this probably has the most hope. I think the offense is what it is. You have Trevor Lawrence. He's going to have some growing pains as a rookie, but he's expected to be a transcendent quarterback for this team. And the offense, they have solid receivers. I would say the defense is the biggest question mark for this team, but the way it succeeds more than we think is if this secondary proves that it can fulfill its potential and help the Jags not remain in the playoff hunt, because they're not in the playoff hunt, but perhaps not be a bottom dweller this year. And I think it's really possible that this Jaguars team won't be picking first, but rather 11th next year. I think they could improve a lot. Finally, in the AFC South, I've got the Houston Texans. I'm going to be honest. I wrote down the whole team for the X-Factor of this team. A whole lot of question marks with this team. You've got, will Deshaun Watson play? Will it be for the Texans? Will he be suspended? There's that whole issue. But even if you remove him from the situation, then you're looking at Tyrod Taylor, who, last time he was a full-time starter, was solid with the Bills. But since then, it's been a lot of stop and starts for him. The running back crew, you've got guys like David Johnson, Philip Lindsay, veterans who seem like they're on their way out as starters, but maybe on this Texans team have something to prove. Mark Ingram as well. Receivers, a lot of young receivers looking to prove themselves, whether it's Anthony Miller, Nico Collins, Kiki Kuti, and then also Brandon Cooks is still here, looking to prove that he can still be an elite target. The defense as a whole, not the defense it used to be. They're going to want to prove that they can still go. There's still guys from those Texan playoff teams like Whitney Merciless and Brendan Scarlett still on this team, although they did just trade Bernard McKinney over the offseason. But overall, this Texans team, it's a giant question mark. So I got the whole team as an X factor. For the reigning AFC champion Kansas City Chiefs, I have Mecole Hardman as the biggest potential swing guy, because while the Chiefs' offense still remains elite, I don't think it's quite as deep and skilled as it used to be. Outside of Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, there's no clear secondary pass catcher, and I think this is when Mecole Hardman's going to need to step up and prove that he was worth I think it was a second-round selection that he was made by the Chiefs. And he's not he can't just be a speedster anymore. He's going to have to factor in the offense, and if he can, then the Chiefs will still, I think, have an edge on teams like the Browns, the Bills, the Titans, coming for their title that they've had for the last 2 years as AFC champions. Then the Los Angeles Chargers, I've got Derwin James, the former All-Pro safety. He's one of the best safeties in the league when healthy. He hasn't been healthy the last 2 years. But if he can come right back in, and reports out of camp say that he's looked great, if he can get back to being a game changer in the secondary, I think this Chargers defense, which I already am really high on, will be even better. They could be one of the, I'd say, top 5 defense in the league, especially if Derwin James can get back to being the Derwin James he was earlier in his career. Then I've got, for Denver, I've got Cortland Sutton, another receiver similar to Odell Beckham, coming off a ACL tear. He was a Pro Bowler for the Denver in 2019, and coming into this year, he's got Jerry Jeudy by his side now. He only got to play with Jeudy one game last year, and if Sutton can recover quickly, we saw Teddy Bridgewater succeed with guys like Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore last year. I don't see why he can't succeed with Sutton and Jeudy this year. but that's only if Sutton is healthy and still the same guy, so we'll have to see with that. And then to cap off the AFC, I've got the Las Vegas Raiders. They did a lot of weird things in the offseason, but I'd say the biggest X factor is their front seven on the defense. Because when you look at this defense, it wasn't very good last year, but the pieces they've added and the pieces they kind of to go with the pieces they already had, I think there's potential here for them to start to rebuild this defense this season. I've written a bunch of names down. They signed Yannick Ngakoue, who last year split between the Ravens and the Vikings. It was a very strange season for him. Terrible Vikings trade, by the way. Always got to get a dig in at them. But he still had 8 sacks, and he could be an impact pass rush for them. He's joining Max Crosby, who's exceeded expectations for this Raiders defense. You got guys like Carl Nassib, who, admittedly, he's more known for being the first openly gay player in the NFL, but he already was a very productive player with his stops in Tampa Bay, and most recently with the Raiders, he got a nice contract extension. Pair them with guys like Corey Littleton, who the Raiders signed last offseason, Nick Kwiatkowski, and today they signed KJ Wright, which I was very excited about. I was unsure why KJ Wright was still a free agent, but I think pairing him with Kwiatkowski and Littleton could make for a quietly productive linebacker core for the Raiders. And if you still want to hold out hope for guys like Cleveland Farrell, who was a total reach at number 4 and so far has looked like a bust, but he has the talent, maybe he could break out this year. You also got Solomon Thomas, the former 49ers number 3 overall pick. He's coming in. And Gerald McCoy, former, probably a 6-time Pro Bowler at this point, coming off an injury. He signed with the Raiders as well. So a lot of pieces for them. Probably too much time spent on the Raiders defense, but that's where I stand with the Raiders. That's the X Factor. I'll have an NFC video coming hopefully within the next few days. I hope you guys found this interesting.